The whole idea of sharding is that you don't need to think about it as a developer in terms of the collection being horizontally split amongst the different nodes. But the reality is there are some things you need to remember once you're in a sharded environment. So the first is that every document needs to include the shard key now. All right, the second is that the shard key is immutable. Okay, so once you've set the shard key inside a document, you can't change it. So you have to be thoughtful about where you set it up. The next is that you need an index that starts with the shard key. So what this means is that if the shard key is, let's say, student ID, then there needs to be an index. The index could be student ID comma class, and that would be fine. That would satisfy the criteria that there needs to be an index on the shard key. The index that satisfies this requirement can't be a multi-key index. So if it's a multi-key index, then you need to have a separate index on the shard key, or that starts with the shard key, in order to satisfy that requirement. When you do an update, you have to specify the shard key or specify that multi is true. So shard key has to be specified or multi. And by the way, if you do multi or don't specify the shard key in the update, when you do multi, then it's going to send that to all of the nodes. And just generally speaking, whenever you send a query that doesn't include a shard key, it's going to send it across all the nodes. So no shard key means scatter gather operation, which could be expensive. So you have to think about it when you're creating the shard key and you're sharding the collection. What is a key that I'm probably going to use in most queries? Because that's the key that I'd really want to have in my shard key. So these are some of the considerations of sharding on development that you need to think about. Another one, which is maybe not obvious, is that you can't have a unique key, no unique key, no unique index, unless it's also part of the shard key. All right, unless part of the shard key. And the reason is that, or it starts with a shard key, I should say. So if the shard key is student ID comma class, then you could have a unique index on student ID comma class comma something else, which means that basically it's unique on student ID comma class. And the reason for this requirement is that there's no way for it to enforce the uniqueness of any index that doesn't include the shard key, because it doesn't know whether or not the copies exist on different shards, because the indexes are actually on each shard, and so there's no collective way for the database to know whether that uniqueness would be satisfied or not. All right, so these are some of the implications of sharding as a developer, and you need to keep them in mind as you write queries in a sharded environment. Time for a quiz. Suppose you want to shard the zip code collection after importing it. You want to shard on the zip code itself. What index would be required to allow MongoDB to shard on the zip code? So an index on zip code, or a non-multi-key index that starts with zip. No index is required to use a zip as a shard key. A unique index in the zip code, or any index that includes the zip code. And what do you think the answer is there?